Hey there, travelers. Before we dive into tonight's story, drop a comment below telling us where you're tuning in from. Now let's begin our journey into the unknown. The headache hit me before I opened my eyes. Sharp, pulsing, like someone had driven a railroad spike through my temple. I was sitting upright, swaying slightly, my cheek pressed against cold glass. The rhythmic clacking beneath me was unmistakable. Subway train. My eyes shot open. Last thing I remembered, I was driving home from my IT job in Brooklyn. Some jerk in an SUV ran a red light, and then nothing. The train car was empty, not just uncrowded, completely deserted. The fluorescent lights flickered overhead, casting an eerie glow across the graffiti-scarred seats. My watch read 8:42 p.m., but something felt off. Hello? My voice echoed through the empty car. No answer, just the relentless rattle of wheels on track. When the train finally pulled into Chambers Street Station, I stumbled onto the platform, legs wobbly. The station was deserted too. Emergency lights cast long shadows across the tiled walls. I climbed the stairs to street level, and that's when I heard it. Screaming. Not the normal sounds of New York City, but pure, primal terror. People were running, hundreds of them, flowing like a human river down the street. In the distance, sirens wailed. And then I saw it. The head of the Statue of Liberty, ripped clean off, bouncing down the avenue like a bowling ball, crushing cars and leaving devastation in its wake. My blood turned to ice water. No way, I whispered. No fucking way. I'd seen this before. Not in person, but in a movie theater back in 2008. Cloverfield. The found footage monster movie about a creature attacking New York City. I was watching the opening act play out in real life. A woman slammed into me, her eyes wild with panic. "Run, you idiot!" she screamed before disappearing into the crowd. Military Humvees roared past, soldiers hanging off the sides, rifles at the ready. The ground shook beneath my feet, rhythmic tremors that sent trash cans toppling. Boom, 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 footsteps. Massive ones. I ducked into a nearby electronics store, its windows already shattered, abandoned TVs still flickering with emergency broadcasts. On the screen, a news helicopter captured what everyone was running from. A creature the size of a skyscraper, all gangly limbs and rage, tearing through lower Manhattan. "This isn't possible," I muttered, pressing my hands against my temples. "This is a movie. I've seen this movie." "Sir, this area is being evacuated." A soldier appeared in the doorway, his face streaked with sweat and dirt. "You need to move north immediately." The soldier, Richards on his name tag, grabbed my arm, practically dragging me outside. "The Brooklyn Bridge," I said, the words tumbling out before I could stop them. "It's going to collapse. Don't let people evacuate that way." Richards froze. "What did you just say?" "The bridge. The monster's going to hit it. Everyone on it will die." Even as I spoke, I knew how insane I sounded. His grip tightened. "How could you possibly know that?" Before I could answer, his radio crackled to life. I couldn't make out the words, but Richard's face drained of color. "Colonel Burke wants you," he said, his voice flat. "Now." 20 minutes later, I was sitting in what had once been a bank, now converted into a makeshift military command center. Maps covered the walls. Radio chatter filled the air. And standing over me was Colonel William Burke, 6 foot something of pure military intensity, with steel gray hair and eyes that could drill through concrete. "Alex Daniels," he said, reading from a tablet. "IT specialist at Consolidated Data Services. No military background, no scientific training, no government clearance." He set down the tablet and leaned in close. "So explain to me how you knew about the Brooklyn Bridge attack 10 minutes before it happened." My mouth went dry. "You wouldn't believe me if I told you." "Try me, because right now you look like either a psychic or a terrorist." I took a deep breath. Where I come from, this already happened. But it wasn't real. It was a movie. Cloverfield. The monster, the attacks, everything. I was in an accident. And somehow I woke up here, where it's all real. Burke's face remained impassive. A movie. Yes. And you know what happens next? I nodded slowly. Prove it. Tell me something else. I closed my eyes, trying to remember the details of a film I'd seen years ago. The military will try conventional weapons. They won't work. The creature has parasites, smaller monsters that fall off its body and attack people. One bite is fatal. As if on cue, the radio exploded with chatter. Reports of unknown hostile organisms attacking a medical station 3 blocks away. Burke's eyes narrowed. Keep talking. The evacuation point at Grand Central. It's not safe. The monster will come through there. And I stopped, suddenly uncertain if I should reveal everything I knew. And what? Burke pressed. The military has a last resort option. Operation Hammer Down. They're going to level Manhattan to kill it. Everyone left behind will die. The command center went silent. Burke studied me for a long moment, then turned to Richards. Get a team ready. We're moving our evac point from Grand Central. He looked back at me. If you're playing games with us, Daniels, I'll personally put a bullet in your head. I'm not. I just want to help. Burke was about to respond when the building shook violently. Dust rained from the ceiling. Outside, something roared, a sound that rattled my bones and set my teeth on edge. It's getting closer, Burke said. Richards, take a team to 51st and Madison. Get those civilians out. He turned to me. You're going too. Since you seem to know so much, make yourself useful. The city was burning. Smoke turned the night sky orange as Richards' team moved through the streets, directing terrified civilians toward the new evacuation point. I stayed close, trying to remember every detail of the movie that might help. We reached an intersection where a bus had overturned, trapping dozens of people. As the soldiers worked to free them, I felt that familiar vibration in the ground. Boom, boom, boom. We need to move, I said urgently. It's coming this way. Richards ignored me, focused on helping an elderly woman through the bus window. Then I saw it. Movement in the subway entrance across the street. Not people fleeing, something else. Small, pale creatures skittering up the stairs. Parasites! I shouted, just as one launched itself at a soldier. Richard spun, raising his rifle, but it was too late. The creature latched onto the man's chest, its spider-like limbs digging in. The soldier screamed, his back arching in agony. Without thinking, I grabbed a road flare from a nearby emergency kit, lit it, and hurled it at the parasite. The creature shrieked as flames engulfed it, releasing its victim and writhing on the pavement. Fire! I yelled. They hate fire! Richards didn't question me this time. Flares and incendiaries. Light them up. The soldiers deployed a wall of flame just as more parasites emerged. The creatures retreated, hissing and clicking. We managed to evacuate everyone from the bus, the wounded soldier carried by his comrades. As we regrouped, Richards gave me a long look. That wasn't in any military briefing, he said. How did you know? Before I could answer, his radio crackled. Colonel Burke's voice cut through the static. All units, be advised. New intel confirms incendiary weapons effective against smaller hostiles. Redirect civilians to secondary evacuation point at 77th and Park. Richards handed me a flare gun. Whatever you are, Daniels, I'm glad you're on our side. For the first time since waking up on that subway, I felt a spark of hope. Maybe I was here for a reason. Maybe I could change how this story ends. As the night wore on, we saved more lives, redirecting evacuations, avoiding the creature's path, fighting off parasites. With each successful prediction, Burke's suspicion of me transformed into something else: reliance. By dawn, we had established a defensive perimeter around the new evacuation zone. Military helicopters ferried civilians to safety while ground forces held the line. I stood with Richards at the command post, watching the operation unfold. "Colonel wants to see you," he said, nodding toward a communications tent. Inside, Burke was hunched over a satellite phone, his face grim. He hung up when he saw me. "Washington is getting nervous," he said without preamble. "Hammer Down is still on the table. 6 hours from now, nothing in Manhattan will be left standing." He fixed his intense gaze on me. "Unless you have something else to share from your movie." I hesitated. The truth was, I couldn't remember how Cloverfield ended. Did they kill the monster? Did the characters escape? I couldn't recall, but I knew one thing for certain. I wasn't just watching a movie anymore. I was living it. And somehow, I had to find an ending that saved as many lives as possible. I might, I said finally. But first, I need to know everything you know about this creature. Where it came from. Why it's here. Burke nodded to a soldier, who handed him a classified folder stamped with warnings. "Welcome to Operation Liberty Down, Mr. Daniels," Burke said, sliding the folder across the table. "God help us all." The folder contained documents that made my stomach lurch. Seismic readings, radiation alerts, military reports detailing the initial contact and the rapid escalation of the threat. The government had been tracking something massive in the depths of the Atlantic for weeks before it made landfall. The data painted a picture more complex and terrifying than anything depicted in the film I remembered. "This is comprehensive," I managed, looking up at Burke. "The highest levels of government have been monitoring this situation," he replied, dark circles under his eyes betraying his exhaustion. "The details are different," I said carefully. "There's more to this than what I know." Burke grimaced. "We don't know what to think, but that's not all." He pulled out another document, readings from a deep-sea research station, seismic anomalies, radiation spikes, and electromagnetic disturbances that had been occurring with increasing frequency over the past year. "The station went dark 3 days ago," Burke said, "right before our visitor made landfall." Richards entered the tent, his uniform splattered with dark stains I tried not to think about. "Sir, Dr. Shaw is here." A woman stepped in behind him. She was in her 40s, with sharp features and prematurely gray hair pulled back in a severe ponytail. She wore a lab coat over tactical gear, a government ID clipped to her pocket. "Dr. Harper Shaw, Quantum Physics Division." Her eyes locked onto me immediately. "This is him? The predictor?" She didn't wait for an answer, approaching me with scientific intensity. "Tell me exactly what happened before you arrived here." I recounted the car accident, waking on the subway. The realization that I was living through a movie I'd seen. Dr. Shaw nodded as if this confirmed something. "Classic displacement symptoms. The accident must have created the bridge." "Bridge?" I asked. "Between dimensions." She said it like she was discussing the weather. "We've been monitoring quantum disturbances for months, microscopic tears in reality. But this," she gestured toward the chaos outside. "This is the first macro-level event." Burke cleared his throat. "Dr. Shaw believes our visitor isn't just attacking the city. It's attracted to something. To you specifically," Dr. Shaw added. "Or rather, to the dimensional anomaly you represent." I felt like the floor was tilting beneath me. "You're saying I brought this thing here?" "No," she clarified. "It was already coming. But your arrival, a human traveling between dimensions, it's like a beacon. The creature can sense the disruption you caused." "That's why it's following the evacuation path," Burke said grimly. "It's following you." The realization hit me like a physical blow. All those people running for their lives. The monster was hunting them because of me. "So what do we do?" I asked, my voice barely steady. Dr. Shaw's eyes gleamed with scientific zeal. "We use you to lure it away from population centers. Then we study it." Burke's jaw tightened. "We use him to lure it somewhere we can kill it." The two stared at each other, the tension palpable. "With all due respect, Colonel," Shaw said, "this is first contact with a being from another dimension. The scientific value won't matter if it destroys New York," Burke snapped. He turned to me. "We need your help, Daniels. You know this thing better than anyone." Before I could respond, Richards burst into the tent. "Sir, we've got a problem. The creature's changed direction. It's heading straight for us." The evacuation point disintegrated into chaos. Helicopters scrambled to lift off with as many civilians as possible. On the ground, soldiers herded people onto trucks and buses. I found myself in a Humvee with Dr. Shaw, racing north through debris-strewn streets. Behind us, that terrible sound, boom, 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 grew louder. "Why did it change direction?" I asked. "I haven't moved until now." Shaw typed frantically on a tablet. "It must be able to track the dimensional disturbance from further away than we thought. Or," she paused, glancing at me, "or there's another breach. Another person like me?" She nodded grimly. It's possible. The Humvee swerved sharply as something massive crashed into the street ahead, a piece of skyscraper torn from its foundation. Our driver barely avoided it, mounting the sidewalk and scraping past an abandoned city bus. My mind raced, trying to remember more details from the film. In the movie, they never explained why it attacked. They just showed people trying to escape. Well, your movie didn't have me in it, Shaw said, her eyes never leaving her tablet. And I plan to understand exactly what we're dealing with. We reached a makeshift scientific outpost set up in Columbia University's physics building. Inside, dozens of researchers worked at hastily assembled stations, surrounded by equipment I couldn't begin to identify. Dr. Shaw led me to a central platform. Stand here. I hesitated. What is this? Quantum resonance scanner. It won't hurt. She began flipping switches. Much. That didn't inspire confidence, but I stepped onto the platform. Lights hummed to life around me, and I felt a strange vibration, like standing too close to massive speakers. Fascinating, Shaw murmured, watching readings flicker across a screen. Your quantum signature is completely out of phase with our dimension. You're literally vibrating at a different frequency than everything around you. Is that bad? It's unprecedented. She looked up at me. The monster is attuned to these vibrations. It's a dimensional predator. The building shook suddenly, dust raining down from the ceiling. In the distance, that bone-chilling roar echoed through the city. How long until the military's hammer-down protocol? I asked. 3 hours, Shaw replied. Not enough time for proper study. Not enough time to evacuate everyone either, I said. Shaw's expression shifted, a hint of humanity breaking through her scientific detachment. No, it's not. That's when it hit me, a plan so crazy it might actually work. What if we could open another bridge? Send the creature back where it came from? Shaw stared at me like I'd grown a second head. Theoretically possible, but we'd need equipment that doesn't exist yet, and a power source stronger than anything we have access to. What about the dimensional disturbance I'm causing? Could we amplify that somehow? Her eyes widened. You're suggesting using yourself as bait and a dimensional key? She shook her head. The physiological stress would likely kill you. Better me than millions of people. Before she could respond, Colonel Burke strode in, his face grim. Shaw, I need your assessment. Now. As they conferred in hushed tones, I stepped away, finding myself at a window overlooking the campus. In the distance, smoke billowed from dozens of buildings. Military helicopters circled like angry wasps, ineffectually firing at something I couldn't see. A soldier approached, a woman with Lieutenant Bars and Mills on her nameplate. She handed me a cup of coffee. Heard you're the guy who knows things, she said quietly. I accepted the coffee gratefully. Some things. Not enough. They're saying you're from another dimension. That true? Apparently. She nodded, seeming to take this in stride. My brother was at the Brooklyn Bridge. Your warning saved his life. Her eyes met mine. So whatever dimension you're from, I'm glad you're here. Something in her simple gratitude cut through my fear. I wasn't just a helpless IT guy dropped into a nightmare anymore. I was making a difference. Lieutenant Mills, Burke called from across the room. We're moving out. Get Daniels ready. Mills nodded. Sir. She turned back to me. Looks like you're coming with us. Where are we going? Central Park. Dr. Shaw thinks it's far enough from civilian populations, but close enough to draw the creature away from escape routes. I remembered the ending of Cloverfield then. The military bombing the creature in Central Park as the last surviving characters escaped by helicopter. Did they kill it in the movie? I couldn't remember. As we prepared to move out, Shaw pulled me aside. I've been authorized to attempt your plan, she said quietly. Creating a dimensional bridge to send it back. But Colonel Burke doesn't believe it will work. He's planning to deploy a tactical nuclear device as soon as we've drawn the creature to the park. My blood ran cold. A nuke in Manhattan? It's already been removed from Hammerdown's arsenal. This is happening with or without us. Her eyes bore into mine. I need to know you understand what you're volunteering for. If we attempt to create a bridge using your quantum resonance, the physiological strain could tear you apart at the cellular level. And if we don't try? Then Burke drops his bomb, kills the creature, and irradiates half of New York State. She continued staring at me, waiting for my decision. Let's do it, I said finally. I'll be your dimensional key. The convoy moved through eerily empty streets towards Central Park. I rode with Mills, Shaw, and a team of scientists and soldiers. Equipment had been hastily loaded into trucks, a collection of devices that Shaw hoped could amplify my quantum resonance, enough to create a tear between dimensions. Your quantum frequency is shifting, Shaw said, monitoring a device clipped to my jacket. You're becoming more attuned to our dimension with each passing hour. Meaning? Meaning our window of opportunity is closing. Soon, you'll be quantum locked to this reality. I didn't know if that was good news or bad news. Part of me had been clinging to the hope that I might somehow return to my own dimension when this was over. But another part, I thought of the people I'd helped save. Lieutenant Mills' brother, the civilians we'd redirected from the monster's path. Here, I mattered in a way I never had back home. We arrived at Central Park's Great Lawn, now transformed into a military staging area. Tanks and artillery pieces surrounded a central clearing where Shaw's team was setting up their equipment. Nearby, a different team was preparing what I could only assume was Burke's nuclear contingency plan. As evening approached, the sky darkened with storm clouds. Lightning flashed, illuminating the skeletal silhouettes of Manhattan's damaged skyline. The quantum fluctuations are affecting weather patterns, Shaw explained, adjusting dials on a machine that hummed with increasing intensity. It's a side effect of dimensional bleed. Burke approached, his face set in grim determination. We've got movement. The creature's heading this way. He looked at me. Whatever you two are planning, do it fast. My orders are to deploy within 30 minutes, with or without evacuation clearance. Shaw's head snapped up. That's not enough time. It's all you've got. Burke turned to leave, then paused. For what it's worth, Daniels, I hope your crazy plan works. As he walked away, Shaw frantically calibrated her equipment. We're going to need to amplify your quantum signature beyond anything a human body should be able to withstand, she said, her voice tight with tension. Will it work? She didn't look up. Theoretically. But the energy requirements are astronomical. We'd need the creature itself, I realized suddenly. It's a dimensional anomaly too, right? Couldn't we use its energy? Shaw froze, then slowly turned to face me. Yes, she whispered. Yes, that might actually work. Her fingers flew across a keyboard. We could create a feedback loop. Your resonance draws it in, and its power amplifies the bridge. So we're definitely using me as bait. Not just bait, she corrected. A catalyst. Before I could process what that meant, the ground began to shake. Not the rhythmic tremors of the creature's footsteps, but a continuous vibration that made the equipment rattle. It's coming, Mills said, raising her rifle as if it would make any difference against something the size of a skyscraper. Shaw thrust a device into my hands. A metal disc connected to wires that fed back into her machines. Hold this. When I give the signal, press the center button. Around us, soldiers scrambled into defensive positions. Tanks rolled forward, their barrels elevating toward the tree line. And then, with a roar that seemed to split the sky itself, the creature emerged. In the fading light, I finally saw it clearly for the first time. Towering above the tallest trees, its gangly limbs supporting a body that defied biological logic. Its skin was a pallid gray, covered in what looked like open wounds, and its face, if you could call it that, was a nightmare of misaligned teeth and too many eyes. Now! Shaw shouted. Press it now! I slammed my hand against the button. The disc burned hot in my palm as energy surged through it. Pain shot up my arm, across my chest, into my skull, like being electrocuted from the inside out. The creature's roar changed pitch, becoming something almost like confusion. It turned toward me, all those eyes focusing with terrible intelligence. It's working! Shaw yelled over the howling wind that had suddenly kicked up around us. The quantum fields are aligning! The air in front of me seemed to distort, like heat waves rising from hot asphalt. colors bent and twisted. The creature took a step toward me, then another, drawn by whatever energy was now pouring out of my body. Through tears of pain, I saw Burke shouting into a radio, gesturing frantically toward what I now realized was a nuclear warhead being readied for deployment. Shaw's machines whined, the pitch rising to an unbearable level. "Hold on," she screamed. "Just a few more seconds." The creature loomed over us now, so close I could smell its alien stench, like ozone and rotting flesh. One massive limb reached toward me. The air between us tore open. There's no other way to describe it. Reality itself split apart, revealing a swirling vortex of darkness and light. The pull was instantaneous. Equipment, debris, and even smaller vehicles began sliding toward the breach. The creature's roar turned to a screech as it too was pulled toward the vortex. It dug its claws into the earth, tearing great furrows in the ground, fighting against the pull of its home dimension. Through the haze of pain blurring my vision, I saw Burke running toward the nuclear device, shouting orders to abort. Shaw was on her knees, her equipment melting around her. And Mills was holding onto a tank barrel, reaching toward me, her mouth forming words I couldn't hear over the roar of the breach. My feet left the ground as the vortex pulled me in. The creature, still screeching, was being dragged along with me. This was it. My final act in this dimension would be to take this monster back where it came from. As darkness enveloped me, I felt almost peaceful. I'd made a difference here. Saved lives. Found purpose. The last thing I saw was Mills's face, her eyes wide with horror, as both the creature and I were swallowed by the swirling void. Then everything went black. Consciousness returned in fragments. First came the pain. A throbbing, all-encompassing ache that seemed to reach the atomic level of my being. Then sound. A high-pitched ringing that slowly faded into a rhythmic beeping. Finally, light pierced through my eyelids, sending sharp daggers into my brain. I forced my eyes open to stark fluorescent lighting, hospital ceiling, IV drip, heart monitor. "He's awake," someone said, their voice distant and muffled, as if I were underwater. A face appeared above me, Lieutenant Mills, her features tight with concern. "Daniels? Can you hear me?" My throat felt like sandpaper. "Where?" was all I could manage. "Underground medical facility, Fort Hamilton," she replied. "You've been unconscious for 3 days." 3 days. The dimensional breach. The creature. It all came rushing back. "Did it work?" I croaked. Mills exchanged glances with someone beyond my field of vision. "Sort of." I tried to sit up, but my body refused to cooperate. Every muscle screamed in protest. "Easy," Mills said, placing a gentle hand on my shoulder. "Your cellular structure is... well, Dr. Shaw can explain it better." As if summoned, Shaw appeared at my bedside, her clinical demeanor tinged with something that might have been respect. "You should be dead," she stated matter-of-factly. "No human should have survived that level of quantum displacement. But I did." "Indeed." She checked readings on the monitors. "The dimensional bridge you created was unprecedented. The creature was pulled back through, but the breach didn't close completely." Cold fear gripped me. "It's still open?" "No," she said quickly. "It collapsed, but not before." She hesitated, which seemed unlike her. "Not before something else came through." Mills shot her a warning look, but Shaw continued. "Scouts. Smaller versions of the primary creature. We've confirmed 6 so far, possibly more." The room seemed to tilt. I hadn't closed the door. I'd opened it wider. "Where's Burke?" I asked. Mills's expression darkened. "MIA. He was trying to abort the nuclear deployment when the breach opened. The blast radius caught him." "The nuke went off?" I felt sick. "Low-yield tactical device," Shaw clarified. "Contained damage, but it destroyed our equipment and most of the data we collected." I closed my eyes, trying to process everything. "So we're still in danger?" "Yes and no," Shaw replied. "The creatures are smaller, more vulnerable, but they're also more elusive. They've gone to ground somewhere in the city." A new voice entered the conversation, deep, authoritative, instantly commanding attention. "And that's where you come in, Mr. Daniels." A man in an impeccable black suit stood in the doorway. He was tall, with salt and pepper hair and eyes that seemed to evaluate and categorize everything they saw. "This is Director Carson," Mills said. "He's coordinating the containment effort." "Containment?" I echoed. Carson approached my bed. "We've established a quarantine zone in Lower Manhattan. The official story is a chemical spill. Meanwhile, specialized units are hunting these scouts." "And what do you want from me?" I asked, though I already suspected the answer. "The same thing they want," Carson said coolly. "You." Shaw stepped in. "Your quantum signature is still distinct from our dimension. These scouts can sense it, just like their parent. You want to use me as bait, again." Carson didn't bother denying it. "You're the only one who can draw them out, and we need to eliminate them before they mature or potentially open another breach." I laughed bitterly. "Last time I was bait, I nearly died." "This time will be different," Shaw insisted. "We've developed countermeasures, and we've learned from our mistakes." I looked at Mills, searching for some truth beyond their words. Her expression was grim but resolute. "It's your choice, Daniels," Carson said, though his tone suggested otherwise. "But consider this. You've seen what one of these things can do. Imagine 6. 24 hours later, I was sitting in the back of an armored vehicle heading into the quarantine zone. My body still ached, but military-grade painkillers kept the worst at bay. Beside me sat Mills, checking her weapon, a specialized rifle that fired what Shaw had termed quantum destabilizing rounds. "They disrupt the creature's molecular cohesion," she had explained during the briefing, "essentially forcing it to exist fully in our dimension, making it vulnerable to conventional weapons." Carson's plan was simple on paper. I would move through predetermined locations in the quarantine zone, drawing the scouts out with my quantum signature. Shaw had enhanced this signature with a device strapped to my chest, a smaller, refined version of what we'd used in Central Park. Once the creatures appeared, strike teams led by Mills would eliminate them. Simple. Except for the part where I was literally monster bait. The vehicle stopped at the edge of the zone, a ghost town of abandoned buildings surrounded by military checkpoints. What had once been a bustling part of Manhattan was now eerily silent, save for the occasional flutter of debris in the wind. "Remember," Mills said as we prepared to disembark, "stay within visual range of at least one team member at all times. If you spot a scout, don't run. Their movement is triggered by rapid acceleration." I nodded, adjusting the earpiece that connected me to the operations command center. "Let's get this over with." We moved through empty streets, past hastily abandoned cars and storefronts with lights still on. Newspaper pages tumbled across the pavement like urban tumbleweeds. The whole scene reminded me of those apocalypse movies where the world ends not with a bang, but with an eerie absence of humanity. The first location was a subway station, one of several spots where unusual energy readings had been detected. We descended into the darkness, the beam from Mills's tactical light cutting through the gloom. "Activating the beacon," I said, pressing the button on my chest device. It hummed to life, emitting a low vibration that I could feel in my bones. According to Shaw, this would amplify my natural quantum disruption, making me irresistible to the dimensional scouts. Lucky me. We waited in tense silence, the minutes stretching like hours. Nothing happened. "Maybe they're not home," I whispered, trying to lighten the mood. Mills didn't smile. Next location. We visited 3 more sites, an abandoned office building, a park, and a construction site, with the same result. Nothing. By late afternoon, frustration was setting in. "I don't get it," I said as we regrouped near a military checkpoint. Shaw was certain they'd be drawn to me. Carson's voice crackled over the comm. "We're detecting unusual readings half a mile east of your position. Proceed there immediately." The new location was a partially demolished apartment complex. Scaffolding surrounded the structure, and heavy machinery sat idle in the courtyard. As we approached, I felt something. A subtle shift in the air pressure, like the feeling before a thunderstorm. "I think we're close," I murmured. Mills signaled her team to spread out, weapons ready. We entered the main building through a shattered lobby door. Inside it was dark and still, with dust particles dancing in the few beams of light that penetrated the boarded windows. The device on my chest pulsed more intensely, almost painfully. "Something's here," I whispered. A low chittering sound echoed from somewhere above us. Mills froze, her rifle aimed at the ceiling. More sounds followed. Scratching, sliding, a wet slithering noise that made my skin crawl. Then movement caught my eye, a shadow detaching itself from the darkness of a hallway. It was smaller than the main creature, perhaps the size of a large dog, but with the same unsettling anatomical wrongness. Multiple limbs, too many eyes, skin that seemed to shift and ripple. "Contact," Mills breathed into her calm. The scout tilted its head, studying us with alien intelligence. The device on my chest hummed louder, and the creature took a step forward, then another, drawn inexorably toward me. Mills aimed her rifle, but I raised a hand to stop her. "Wait! It's not attacking." The creature continued its approach, moving with an almost curious demeanor. It stopped a few feet away, swaying slightly. "It's like it recognizes you," Mills said, her weapon still trained on the scout. That's when I realized. It did recognize me. Not as food or a threat, but as something familiar. Something from home. "It's not hunting us," I said slowly. "It's lost." Before Mills could respond, the building shook violently. Dust rained from the ceiling as a deafening roar penetrated the walls. The scout before us jerked its head up, then skittered away with surprising speed. "What the hell was that?" I asked. Carson's voice erupted from our comms. "All teams be advised. We have a new contact. Repeat, new contact. Size consistent with the primary creature." My blood turned to ice. "That's impossible." We sent it back. "Apparently not," Mills said grimly. "Or there's more than one." The building shook again, more violently this time. Through a broken window, I glimpsed something massive moving between the buildings. A silhouette that shouldn't exist in our world. "All teams, fall back to extraction points immediately," Carson ordered. "Operation is aborted." Mills grabbed my arm. "Let's move." But as we turned to leave, we found our path blocked by not one but 3 scouts. They chittered excitedly, their attention fixed on me, or more specifically, on the device strapped to my chest. "They're drawn to the quantum amplifier," I realized aloud. Mills raised her rifle. "Shut it down." I fumbled for the switch, but the device wasn't responding. "I can't." The scouts began circling us, their movements becoming more agitated. Outside, another ear-splitting roar shook the building to its foundation. "Plan B," Mills decided, and opened fire. The specialized rounds hit the nearest scout, which convulsed violently before collapsing into a heap. The other 2 scattered, disappearing into the shadows of the building. "Run!" Mills shouted. We raced through the lobby and out into the street, only to be confronted by a scene of chaos. Military vehicles were speeding away from something massive moving between the buildings 2 blocks away. The ground trembled with each of its steps. "This way!" Mills pulled me toward an idling Humvee. We had barely reached it when one of the scouts burst from a side alley, tackling Mills to the ground. Her rifle skittered across the pavement as she grappled with the creature, its multiple limbs thrashing wildly. Without thinking, I grabbed a piece of rebar from the debris-strewn street and swung with all my might. The metal connected with the scout's head with a sickening crunch. It shrieked, releasing Mills and turning its attention to me. I backed away, still clutching the rebar. The scout followed, drawn by the humming device on my chest. That's when clarity struck me like a thunderbolt. It wasn't just following me. It was following the quantum signature. The same signature that had created the bridge between dimensions. "Get to the vehicle," I told Mills, who had retrieved her rifle and was aiming at the creature. "I have an idea." "What are you doing?" she demanded. "Trust me." I started backing toward the larger creature in the distance, the scout following me step for step. "Just be ready to pick me up when I run." Before she could protest, I turned and sprinted directly toward the massive form, now clearly visible between the buildings. The scout followed, as I knew it would, and behind it, I heard the distinctive chittering of the other 2 joining the chase. The quantum amplifier on my chest was vibrating wildly now, almost painful against my skin. But I kept running, ignoring the bone-deep ache in my muscles and the fear screaming in my brain. I rounded a corner and finally saw it in its full, terrible glory. The creature, identical to the one we'd faced in Central Park. It turned its monstrous head toward me, all those alien eyes focusing with predatory intensity. The scouts were closing in behind me. Ahead, the larger creature let out a roar that seemed to shake the very air. I reached for the amplifier, cranking its output to maximum. Pain lanced through my chest as the device began to overheat against my skin. "Come on," I whispered, staring up at the towering monster. "You want to go home?" "Me too." The air around me began to distort, colors bending and twisting just as they had in Central Park. The scouts reached me first, but instead of attacking, they circled me excitedly, their chittering rising to a fever pitch. The larger creature took a thunderous step forward, then another, drawn by the quantum disruption emanating from my device. "Shaw!" I shouted into my comm. "I need you to remotely overload the amplifier." Her voice came back, frantic. "That could kill you." "If you don't, that thing will kill everyone," I shot back. "Do it now." There was a moment of hesitation, then, initiating overload sequence. The amplifier's vibration intensified to an unbearable level. My vision blurred as pain engulfed me, but through the haze, I saw it happening. The air in front of me tearing open, creating the same swirling vortex we'd seen in Central Park. The scouts leapt into it without hesitation, disappearing into the churning dimensional breach. The larger creature hesitated, fighting against the pull, its massive limbs digging into the asphalt. I staggered forward, closer to the breach, increasing its pull on the creature. The monster roared in defiance, but step by reluctant step, it was being drawn toward the vortex. My own feet began to slide forward, the breach pulling me in as well. I tried to brace myself, but my strength was failing, my consciousness flickering like a dying light bulb. Through the pain and disorientation, I saw a Humvee screech to a halt nearby. Mills leapt out, firing her rifle at the creature to drive it further toward the breach. She was shouting something, but I couldn't hear her over the roar of the vortex. The monster gave one final, earth-shaking howl as it was finally pulled into the breach. The vortex began to collapse, energy crackling around its edges. Mills reached me just as my legs gave out. She grabbed my arm, trying to pull me away from the collapsing breach, but the pull was too strong. "Let go!" I shouted. "It'll take you too!" She ignored me, wrapping her arms around my waist and digging her heels into the ground. But it was a losing battle. Both of us were sliding inexorably toward the dimensional tear. In that moment, I made my choice. Using the last of my strength, I shoved her away from me, breaking her grip. As she tumbled backward, I gave her a small, sad smile. "Tell them I found my way home," I said. Then the vortex swallowed me whole, and darkness consumed everything. I awoke to the steady beep of a heart monitor and the antiseptic smell of a hospital room. For a disorienting moment, I thought I was back at Fort Hamilton, that the whole final confrontation had been a dream. But as my vision cleared, I realized this room was different. Smaller, older. The equipment looked outdated compared to the cutting-edge technology of the military facility. I tried to sit up, wincing at the pain that shot through every cell in my body. "Hey, take it easy," said a voice I didn't recognize. A nurse stood at the foot of my bed, adjusting something on my IV. She looked startled to see me conscious. "Where am I?" I asked, my voice a ragged whisper. "Brooklyn Methodist," she replied. "You were in a pretty bad car accident. Been out for almost a week." Car accident. Brooklyn. My mind raced, trying to make sense of it all. What day is it?" "Monday, May 19th, she said, checking my vitals. "And the year?" She gave me an odd look. 2023. How about I get the doctor? He'll want to know you're awake." As she left, I stared at the ceiling, trying to process what had happened. Had it all been a dream? Some kind of coma hallucination brought on by the crash? But it had felt so real. Mills, Burke, Shaw, the creature, the dimensional breach. I lifted my hospital gown and saw a strange, circular burn on my chest, exactly where the quantum amplifier had been. Not a dream then. Dream. Or at least, not entirely. The dimensional breach must have sent me back to my own reality, to the moment of the accident that had started it all. But something was different. I could feel it in the air, in the subtle wrongness of the hospital room, in the strange quality of the light filtering through the blinds. I reached for the TV remote on the bedside table, wincing at the effort, and turned on the small television mounted on the wall. The news was on. Something about military exercises in New York Harbor. The camera panned to show a fleet of naval vessels, more than would be typical for a routine exercise. And then I saw it. A headline crawling across the bottom of the screen. Unusual seismic activity detected off East Coast. My heart began to race, the monitor beside me beeping in alarm. It was happening again. Or perhaps it had always been happening, across countless dimensions, countless versions of our world. In some of those worlds, they would be prepared. In others, they wouldn't stand a chance. But in this world, my world, they would have me. Someone who had seen it all before. Someone who knew what was coming. The lights flickered briefly, and in the distance I heard the low rumble of thunder. Or perhaps something else entirely. I closed my eyes and took a deep, steadying breath. Time to go to work.